The Vaelthari had music. Of course they did. Every civilization that reached the stars eventually discovered that vibrating air or water or crystal or bone could carry meaning. The Vaelthari had been doing it for 11,000 years. Their compositions were mathematical perfections. Recursive harmonics engineered by masters who spent decades studying the geometry of sound. To hear Vaelthari music was, by most species' accounts, to weep without knowing why. So when the first delegate of Earth presented herself at the court of the Thousand Suns, bringing with her a small chromium music player no larger than a human fist, Princess Sorvith Ti Vaelt found the gesture quaint. Touching, even the way a child's crayon drawing is touching when framed beside a Rembrandt. The court was enormous. A hemisphere of living stone carved from the heart of a moon, its ceiling so high that clouds formed naturally near the apex. 1,000 courtiers lined the tiered galleries, their iridescent robes catching the light of the twin stars that burned outside the vast, transparent dome. Every dignitary from 37 civilizations had come to witness the formal first contact between the Vaelthari Dominion and this peculiar new species from a pale blue planet at the edge of an unremarkable spiral arm. The first delegate's name was Commander Amara Diallo. She stood perhaps 1.7 meters tall, modest by most species standards. She wore a simple dark uniform, no jewels, no decorations except a small pin on her lapel that bore the image of Earth from space. She had brought 3 things with her: a translation matrix, a sealed diplomatic packet, and that small silver music player. Princess Sorvith leaned down from her dais. Her form was tall and angular, skin the deep violet blue of a deep ocean, eyes like polished amber. She was, by any measure, magnificent, and she knew it. Princess Sorvith, we are told your species communicates meaning through vibration as well, that you call it music. Commander Diallo, we do, Your Highness. Among other things. Princess Sorvith, we have heard recordings. Curious, primitive, but charming in the way that single-celled organisms are charming when viewed through a microscope. Laughter moved through the court like a warm tide. Soft, elegant laughter. The laughter of people who had never needed to be cruel because cruelty had never been necessary. Commander Diallo did not flinch. She smiled, just slightly, and said nothing. The Vaelthari Grand Maestro performed first. This was standard protocol. The hosts always demonstrated their culture's highest art before the guest could respond. It was considered mercy, a way of setting expectations gently. What followed was extraordinary. An ensemble of 40 musicians played instruments carved from stellar glass, their tones interlocking in spiraling complexity, a sound that seemed to reach directly into the nervous system and reorganize it. The walls of the chamber resonated sympathetically, becoming part of the instrument. The courtiers closed their eyes. The ambassadors from other species gripped their seats. Even the stars outside seemed to dim a little, as though listening. It lasted 11 minutes. When it ended, the silence lasted almost as long. Then every eye turned to Commander Diallo. She walked to the center of the floor, placed the small silver player on the stone before her, and looked up at the princess. Commander Diallo, may I add? The question landed strangely in the hall. Princess Sorvith raised an elegant brow. Princess Sorvith, we resolved our last internal conflict 9,000 years ago. We do not speak of that era lightly. She pressed play. It began with a single voice. Not an instrument, not a machine. A human voice, unaccompanied. A deep contralto, singing in a language so old that even the translation matrix could only render it as feeling rather than words. The sound filled the vast chamber slowly, the way dawn fills a valley. From the low places first, then rising. And then a second voice joined. Then a third. Then dozens. Then hundreds. A recorded choir assembled from voices across a century of human history, layered together by engineers who had spent years seeking out the most powerful human voices ever committed to recording. The song built the way a wave builds far out at sea, gathering depth, gathering weight, unhurried and inevitable. It was a battle hymn, one of Earth's oldest, born in the middle of a civil war fought over whether human beings could be owned by other human beings. Written in a single night by a poet who had seen the campfires of soldiers and understood, in that moment, that some things are worth dying for. Commander Diallo did not explain any of this. She stood still, hands clasped behind her back, and let the music speak. The courtiers stirred. At first they simply looked puzzled. The harmonics were crude compared to Vaelthari composition, the mathematical structure almost childishly simple. But something else was happening. Something that no harmonic analysis could fully account for. The emotion was visible, not suggested, not implied, raw and open and unashamed. Grief welded to defiance, sorrow to hope, as though the two things were not opposites but the same element in different states. The voices cracked in places. Some of the singers had clearly been weeping when they recorded their parts. The imperfections were not hidden. They had been kept. Princess Sorvith sat very still. Her amber eyes did not close. They widened. The song ended. In the 11,000 years of Vaelthari civilization, their music had been refined to the point where emotion was precisely calibrated. A feeling could be induced with the accuracy of a surgical instrument. Grief at exactly the right depth. Joy at exactly the right brightness. The masters of their art had eliminated the impurities. The cracks, the breath, the hesitation. And in doing so, they had, without realizing it, eliminated something else. Princess Sorvith descended from the dais for the first time in the memory of her living courtiers. She crossed the stone floor until she stood before Commander Diallo. The height difference between them was significant. It did not seem significant. Princess Sorvith, the voices. They are imperfect. Commander Diallo, yes. Princess Sorvith, deliberately. Commander Diallo, we could have corrected them. We chose not to. A long pause. Somewhere in the upper gallery, one of the younger courtiers made a sound. It took a moment for anyone, including the courtier herself, to identify what the sound was. She was crying. She had never cried before during a musical performance. The sound had bypassed every cultural filter she possessed and struck something she had not known was there. Princess Sorvith, this song. It speaks of dying. Commander Diallo, it speaks of choosing to march toward what may kill you, because what you love is worth more than your life. Princess Sorvith and your people sang this, while marching to their deaths. Commander Diallo, they have never stopped. There is a version sung today, in the ruins of cities, in hospitals, in courtrooms where people are fighting for dignity they should have been born with. My species has not solved the problem of suffering. We have simply refused to be silent about it. Princess Sorvith was quiet for a long time. Around her, the court had grown so still that the sound of the twin stars' distant fusion could almost be heard. A faint, constant roar at the edge of perception. The sound of the universe's own furnaces keeping the darkness back. Later, the diplomatic historians would argue about what happened next. Whether it was protocol, whether it was precedent, whether the princess had simply been moved by something unexpected, the way any person, from any species in any corner of the galaxy, can be moved by a thing they did not know they were missing. It was the gesture, in Vaelthari culture, reserved for those who had survived something that should have destroyed them. Princess Sorvith, we thought music was the pinnacle of civilization. Something built only when you have peace enough to build it. We did not know it could be what keeps you fighting until the peace is won. Commander Diallo picked up her small silver player and tucked it back into her pocket. Commander Diallo, we have 10,000 years of songs like that one. Songs for funerals and for revolutions. For children going to sleep and for soldiers keeping watch. Songs made in slave ships and in prison cells and in the holds of refugee boats crossing dark water at night. We do not make music because life is easy. We make it because sometimes it is the only thing that reminds us why we are still here. The court of the thousand suns did not applaud. Applause felt wrong somehow. Instead, one by one, the courtiers in the upper gallery began to hum. A Vaelthari harmony, slow and open, shaped instinctively around the ghost of the melody they had just heard. It was imperfect. It was the most beautiful thing most of them had ever made. Commander Diallo stood in the center of that sound and looked up at the dome, at the twin stars burning beyond the stone and glass, at the impossible distance between her small blue world and this moon carved by hands that had known peace for 9 millennia. And she breathed in, slowly, and she did not cry. though she wanted to, because there was still work to do, and humans had always been better at the work than the crying. At least in public. And for the first time, the galaxy understood that humanity did not sing because the darkness was gone. They sang to remind themselves, and each other, that the light was worth carrying. If the story moved you, subscribe for more human stories from the stars.